Look at the following question. In the last week, I tried to describe how changed our history, environmental history, in early Middle Ages. How we can define, sorry, I turn the screen because necessary to realize that I am in or out of screen. Good. I try to show how adopted our contemporaries for the changes, environmental changes of early Middle Age. On the early Middle Age, the most important changes after the Roman war period, which supported the great conquering of Roman Empire, are cold period, cold and rainy period. On this time unfolded waves of great migration, which destroyed the Roman Empire. And the last story, which I analyzed, are Viking wanderings and Viking discoveries, mainly in the northern part of Atlantic Ocean. Look at one Hungarian story. A Hungarian story because in the last century of early Middle Age, the Hungarian tribes arrived to the Carpathian Basin. Somehow we are, and the Hungarians are, climate immigrants in the point of view of the Carpathian Basin. If we are looking at changes of climate period, a Hungarian arrived to the Carpathian Basin between the cold period of age of migration and medieval climate optimum. Okay, look at the trajectory. A Hungarian tribes, the original old homeland of Hungarian tribes, somewhere southern part of Ural Mountain. You know the Ural Mountain, recently located in Russia, central part of the Russia. And moved, as quite a typical in the life of nomadic tribes, the first Ugric homeland, Magna Hungaria, somewhere in the area of Volga River, the largest river of Europe, and the third camp Levadia in the frame of Kazan Empire. You know the Kazan Empire, a Turkish empire. A Kazan Empire, one of the largest empire in the early Middle Ages. And very strange, the religion of Kazan Empire. Somebody know which was the religion of Kazan Empire? Judaism. Exceptional. Judaism. Why? Because the Jews, after collapse of state in Near East, is distributed. Emigration, whole of Europe and a large part of Eurasia. And on the time, the Jews community live in diaspora. It's distributed everywhere in Eurasian continent. And when the Kazan Empire founded the state, found a monotheism, because organizing and supporting of centralized state very useful and monotheism. And on that time, free monotheism existed in this Euro-Asian area, Christendom, but the Christian empire, Eastern Roman Empire, quite strong. Therefore, a Kazan leader tried to avoid a strong connection to Constantinople. And other option, a Muslim world. Muslim world, in this period, it's named Baghdad period, Baghdad Caliphate's period. It's a heyday, the highest heyday of Muslim world. Therefore, the third option, the best option for the Khazars, Judaism, because this is a monotheism, but no strong background behind that. Therefore, it's very strange that Kazan Empire and the Kazan elite converted to Judaism. And very interesting, Hungarian tribes, I don't know how long time, because recently there is a great discussion about the rhythm of Hungarian moving on the eastern steppe area, because in the former time when I was a university student, this history was a lot of centuries. But recently, after some new evidences, archaeological evidences, estimate that more shorter this period. But it's verified that the Hungarian tribes lived inside of the Kazan Empire. And very strange, in the 11th century in Hungary, there were two Hungarian kings from Árpád house, the first dynasty of Hungarian state, was two king name after the Old Testament. Solomon and which is the other one? I will remember. Two names from the Old Testament. In the contemporary Europe, nowhere. And probably this is the heritage of Kazan Empire. Okay, good. The next one, it's between Dnieper and Dniester River, and finally right to the Carpathian Basin. Look at one animation. You can follow the timer of the history. It's a Kazan Empire moved into the direction of the Balkanic Peninsula and later to the Carpathian Basin. This is the base of migration. But if we are looking at Carpathian Basin, one basin of Central European Basin area. In this basin, Central European Basin area, there are three elements. The third one, the Carpathian Basin, the Czech Basin, and the Vienna Basin. The largest one are Carpathian Basin. If we are looking at steppe area, this is the last station, the last bay of huge ocean of steppe area. This is the last one. Right, Hungarian tribes. We know a lot of information about coming. We know a lot of information about the Hungarians. Estimate the number of Hungarians, 100,000. This is the list of expected questions and today's slide series. 100,000 first. And secondly, nomadic people moved with 10 million animals. The typical animals of nomadism, sheep and horse. Sheep and horse. Why? Because in the steppe area, the optimal grazing animal is a sheep. Look at the cattle. Cattle, it's not typical on the steppe area, much more the park forest area. You know which is the park forest. There is a typical grassland, bush scatter on the grassland, and some park forest plot inside of that. Why? Because a cattle much higher and able to graze not only the grass, but the leaves of the bushes and leaves of the trees. But in typical steppe area, two animal, it's a fingerprint of nomadism, sheep and horse. Okay, which is the problem with the Carpathian Basin? Too small. If we are looking at last station of Hungarian wandering, it's approximately 1 million square kilometer grazing land. The Carpathian Basin, whole of the size, only 1/3. Moreover, the optimal grazing area, much smaller, only half of this area, under 200 meters altitude. Moreover, large area, temporary or continuously water-covered area, 24 or 25,000 square kilometers. It's not ideal for the nomadism. Therefore, if you remember, I spoke about the challenge and answer situation. Challenge, this is a challenge for the Hungarian nomadic people. Arrive to a small place, somehow try to adapt to the news. It's a challenge for them. Look at the form of the challenge. Yeah, it's a more detailed information, climate, continent, typical physical background of Carpathian Basin, continental weather, 4 seasons, precipitation, it's a change between 5 to 800 millimeters. And very interesting, the structure of Carpathian Basin, it's a circle of vegetation. Central part is a park forest area and oak forest area and beech forest area, spruce field area and alpine zone. 2 main rivers, Danube and the Tisza River, main lake is a Balaton. And it's a brown and the black soil is a typical. But look at the adaptation. The first challenge, the moderate peculiarity of Carpathian Basin, which is the reaction, arrive the Hungarian tribes and try to find new place. And which is, somebody know, which is the new place which attacked after the occupation of Carpathian Basin? No? Nobody? In Italy. In Italy. It's a Po plain area. It's a Po Rivers plain area. But why not optimal for the nomadism? Much smaller, only 30,000 square kilometer. But logical manner, Hungarian tribes try to find, if necessary to escape some western direction, ideal optimal place for nomadism. But a little bit this is a closing trap because the Carpathian Basin is too small, but any other plain area westward much smaller. Therefore turn back and try to adapt somehow. First form of adaptation are raiding campaign. Raiding campaign. There is a high military capacity of the nomadic tribes, and in the time, in the 10th century, this is the age of conquering and settling down in the Carpathian Basin, Europe lived in a typical feudal anarchy. Therefore, this is a market. It's an armed market for the Hungarians. Therefore, sold the arms to Bavarians 1 year, other year the Czech Principality. And somehow this is a guest worker in Western Europe. And raided until the Iberian Peninsula. And very interesting, the best description about the lifestyle of Hungarian tribes left in the notes of a Muslim author, lived in Iberian Peninsula, because on that time, Iberian Peninsula, the recent Spain was a part of Muslim world. It's a Cordovan Caliphate, probably you know this story. And in that time, best scholar lived in the Muslim world and wrote a lot of information about the Hungarians. Okay, but it's a temporary solution because a European state, mainly Holy Roman Empire, integrated the military power of Central and Western Europe and stopped the Hungarians. This raiding campaign, it stopped. Look at the other option. Other option, a meadow transhumance. A transhumance, this is a typical alpine animal husbandry. Probably you know this is the alpine area with high mountain, and the cattle, basically the cattle, during the winter time, living in the basin. In the, here there is, for example, a stable, a steady stable, and the cattle living in the plain and the basin area. But springtime, walking up to the mountain. And it's very rainy mountain area, the general precipitation change between 8 to 1,500 millimeters. Not by chance, for example, you could chocolate milka. It's for example, in the marketing movies, marketing films, the typical, it's a green grazing land in the slope of the alpine region. And this is a place of transhumance going up, and at the end of summertime turn back to the basin, to the valley. And up, down, up, down, up, down. In the plain area, in the Hungarian plain area, no mountain, no mountain. But for example, in Szeged, there is a joke party. It's a two folk dog. Somebody know? Hungarian student. It's there is a joke part. There is a election promise amounting to Szeged, and eternal life and free beer for everybody. You know, it's a joke part founded in Szeged, but really no mountains. But in the former election, received 2% in the governmental election, but no mountain. But in the plain area, 1-2 meters, very important, because if we are looking the profile of the plain area, this is the bed of river, every time under cover of water. It's a low flat plain during a flooding period. Underwater, high flat plain, only serious flood period underwater, and the floodless. And the difference is only 5 meters. Not alpine region, but the small differences determine the lifestyle. And the Hungarians who arrived to the Carpathian Basin had to learn living the different region. Look at, for example, a Hungarian plain, the scattered area, temporary or continuously water cover area. The settlements located to the high floodplain or the floodless area. Look at, this is the black line, the rivers and the streams. A striped area, it's a floodless area, and the small circle, the settlements. This is the first fingerprint of civilization, early medieval civilization, and used regularly a floodplain, low and high floodplain. The next marker, in the Carpathian Basin, there are 3 flooding periods. The first flooding period, March. It's icy flood, when the mountain area melt a snow cover. The second one, June. A green flood. It's a maximal precipitation. And the last one, October, a Mediterranean influence, because Carpathian Basin located between 3 climate zones, ocean, continental and the Mediterranean. And October, the starting day of the Mediterranean winter. And the Mediterranean climate during the summer half year, it's dry, winter half year, very rainy. And October indicate influence of Mediterranean climate. It's a Mediterranean flood. And Hungarians probably picked the information from local people who lived before the Hungarian in the Carpathian Basin, learn the style of meadow transhumance. A little bit similar than applied in the alpine region. During the flooding period, drove the herds, the animals, to the floodless period. after the recovering of the low flood period, turn back the herds, and after the following flood period, go back, go back, go back. And it's very good adaptation to the changing physical environment. Moreover, in consequence of flood and recovery effect of the flood, the grass production much higher than any other part of the plain area. Okay, it's transhumance area, meadow transhumance. This is one form of adaptation. Other form of adaptation, the drainage system. Hungarian archaeologists discovered in the early Middle Ages a very dense structure of drainage and the channel system. It's very surprising. One very dense channel network discovered western part of Hungary, is Transdanubia. One in central part of Hungary between Danube and Tisza River, and one in eastern part of Hungarian plain. Therefore, probably in the early Middle Age, whole of the Carpathian Basin existed a channel system. Why? Because in the Carpathian Basin, the most important problem, the water surplus or water shortage, flooding or drought. Therefore, the Hungarians or the people who lived in the Carpathian Basin realized the best solution is a channel system for the temporary shortage and temporary surplus of the water. How was able to perform? The key of the construction of the channel system was dominance of royal estate. In the 11th and the 12th century, 80% of the estate was directly under ownership of king, of Hungarian king. And the people who lived in the royal estate organized to the service. One of the most important, for example, service of public works. And according to archaeologists, because no written documentary sources about it, only archaeological sources, probably in public work digged this channel. And for example, one of the reconstruction about the channel system in western part of Transdanubia, and which was the function of the channel network. The first, drainage of water covered area. During the flood period, it's drained to the channel, the water surplus. Decrease of flood danger. Decrease of the flood danger because the channel was able to direct a water surplus. Water retention. Water retention because to the channel system connected the lakes, the water lakes, which was the basic and the fundament of irrigation system. During drought period, used the channel system for irrigation. Very important, separation, plant farming and animal husbandry. The grazing damages, one of the most important problems for the peasant husbandry. Therefore, the channel separated the grazing land and arable land. And the military defense, very useful, for example, a covering with water large area. On the Middle Ages is covered large area, cavalry, a heavy cavalry wasn't able to cross through a flooding area. Military defense, very useful. Okay, some types of channels which digged out by archaeologists. And the final solution, you remember, the first try of solution, raiding campaign. The secondly, channel system and not artificial irrigation system. And the final solution was a conversion to agriculture. Why so important? Because if we are looking at carrying capacity, you know which is the carrying capacity, how many people able to live in some added area. And if we are looking at animal husbandry, which is the basis, the pillar of the nomadism, it's able to carry one people, and agrarian economy, agriculture, 5 people. 5-fold higher the carrying capacity. And when converted in the middle of 12th century to agriculture, settled down and converted to agriculture, somebody know in the archaeological side, the indicator of the nomadism, sheep. Sheep. Which animal, this is a guess, which animal is indicator of settled down and agrarian lifestyle? Which animal? A sheep, this is the nomadism. And which animal indicator of agrarian economy and settled down lifestyle? Cheers. Pig, pig, pig. Because the pig, it's not a wandering animal. It's able to move one place to other, but not so easy, not so easy. And if bones, the proportion of the bones in the archaeological site reached 40%, 40% at least, this is the indicator at settled down and agrarian society. Okay, look at the next example. When Europe moved northward and became a continental civilization, had to invent a new agriculture. For formation of European civilization, the basis of formation was a medieval agrarian revolution. The medieval agrarian revolution invented a French scholar. His name is Georges Duby, who described in the middle of 20th century first a medieval agrarian revolution. Look at the detail of medieval agrarian revolution. A lot of innovation, but the most important innovation, introduction of heavy plow, a heavy plow. Rotation system 2 and free field system, a new form of harnessing. But the most important, a heavy plow. Why so important, a heavy plow? Because if you remember, Greek and the Roman civilization focused to the Mediterranean Ocean, Mediterranean Basin. And the typical soil of Mediterranean Basin, it's a light soil. Light soil. Why so important? Because plowing of light soil very easy. Look at, for example, movies. We are approaching to the Christmas, and on the time television and on the movies, cinema, there are a lot of movies about life of Jesus. And look at, for example, landscape on these movies. How many animals necessary to the plowing? One cattle enough for plowing, or 2 slaves. Why? Because the soil is very light. Draw power, not so great problem. 1 animal or 2 slaves able to draw the plow, scratching plow. But in Europe, typical brown soil, interwoven, lot of roots of trees and bushes and very heavy grass vegetation. Therefore, for plowing, necessary to use at least 10 cattle, much smaller, the medieval cattle, but 10 cattle. And very interesting, Why so important innovation? Because no peasant husbandry which contain enough animal. Therefore, for using a heavy plow, necessary collaborate 2, 3, 4 family. And very important, even the early Middle Ages, a culture of collaboration, culture of optimizing of collaboration appeared in the European civilization. Not in the high culture, everyday culture, in the life of peasant. A collaboration, because no husbandry, no peasant husbandry with enough draw power. Collaborate, one another, collaborate and optimize the collaboration. And very important, because on the time 90% of population peasant. Therefore, the profile of civilization profile of Europe determined by mentality of peasant. Not the high culture, not the cavalry, not the noblemans and the noblesse. No, peasant. Collaborate and optimize the collaboration. And the key factor is the heavy plow. It's not important. Okay, look at one look to the heavy plow. It's a contemporary picture and a picture from the 19th century. And very interesting question: which nation invented a heavy plow? Recently, in the literature, used two origins. The one origin, it's a Slavic origin, because the Slavic people live in the northern part of Europe, in forest area, and according to archaeological reconstruction, invented one form of heavy plow. And somebody know which nation was the second one? Who invented the heavy plow? Kazan. I mentioned the Kazan people. The Kazan people, Eastern European empire, with Jews elite, converted Jews religion, and it's very scattered people integrated temporary Hungarian tribes and integrated Turkish tribes. And very interesting, the Turkish tribes lived in the frame of Kazan Empire. A lot of different religion. For example, the basic layer of Hungarian agrarian terms, Turkish. Because, for example, garden, Hungarian name of garden, kert. It's a Turkish origin. Learn in the frame of Kazan Empire. And the basic term of Christian religion, Turkish. Not Slavic or Latin, Turkish. Because the first Christian, the Hungarian met in Volga area. Okay. Heavy plow, it's a great innovation, separated, invented a Slavic people and the Kazan, Turkish people. A Slavic homeland located over there between the Carpathian Basin and the Baltic area. It's a typical marshland area, marshland and forest area. And the other one, Kazan Empire, between Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. And the Alans were a Hungarian garden, because the Alans lived in the Caucasus area, developed a very sophisticated agrarian culture. Good, Kazan Empire I spoke about. Okay, two-field system and three-field system, probably no. A two-field system we can modelize next manner. This is the arable land, half grazing land, half arable land. Winter crop, fallow, winter crop. Change the arable area. And the free-field system, which apply in the mountain area in consequence of the shortage of arable land, winter crop, summer crop, fallow, winter crop, summer crop, fallow, winter crop. It's a rotation for recovery of fertility of soil. Okay, And the next, not so important but very interesting innovation, yoke harness. A yoke harness, you know, neck harness on the word. Yoke harness, which located the power around a neck of, for example, neck of horse. It's limited the draw power of horse. Why? Because it choked after some level of the weight of carriage behind the horse. Therefore, change to the breast harness. But very interesting, increase the power of animal because the draw power it's relocated from neck to the breast of animal. But very interesting. Therefore, I use this innovation and take into the slide series. In the case of cattle or buffalo, and generally the cattle, it's until now. For example, I visited in Romania some years ago, and I remember to my childhood, used a neck harness. My question, why survey in the case of water buffalo or cattle, the neck harness? Why not choking? Somebody met personally with cattle? No? Nobody? Yeah, this is the consequence of urbanization. I spent my childhood in a small village, and my mother told to me that during my young ages, thought about me I have a mental problem because I spoke with the cattle. Not only how are you, but 1 or 2 hours. I sit down beside the cattle and I spoke to her 1 or 2 hours. But some sense of the Roman Catholic Church follow the same career, but I am a Protestant. Probably, therefore, I didn't follow the Franciscan trajectory. But my question, why survive the neck? Okay, probably you don't know. Concentrate to the neck. Somewhere here, there is a bone on the back of neck. Therefore, a horse yoke harness didn't slide back, and therefore, for anatomical reason, don't choking cattle. And this traditional mentality of the using of devices show well one important peculiarity of peasant husbandry. No sensible for innovation. No, if the old device work, no any ambition for the innovating. Look at why. If we are looking at the breast harness, it's very complicated. It's a work of artisan. It's very expensive. Therefore, apply in the case of horse, no other option. But in the case of cattle, it's work. Therefore, until 21st century, where recently are using a yoke harness, it's applied. Because the peasant economy, it's not a profit maximizing economy. The most important ambition of peasant husbandry, the welfare of the family. No more, no profit-oriented construction. Good. Look at how influence profile of economic activity of civilization. If we are looking at global civilization, we can identify 3 cereals which founded our civilization. The first one are wheat. Generally, this Europe and a European area based on wheat and the Near East and the northern part of Africa. Generally, a large European civilization, a wheat-based civilization. The second one, a rice based civilization, which is basically Asian civilization, China, Indochina, Malay Peninsula, and Indonesia. It's a rice-based. And the last one, a corn or maize-based civilization. It's an American civilization, basically. But we can arguing that potatoes maybe, but potatoes not never a basic food of civilization. It's a complementary food much more. Therefore, if we are looking at civilization, and never forget, 90% in traditional time, everywhere, 90% of population living in peasant status. Therefore, agrarian activity determines the profile of civilization. Look at wheat. Look at each of them according to three aspects: labor, yield, productivity, and soil effect. The first one, wheat. Very interesting. If, for example, you read a fairy tale about a traditional time, impression that the peasant working very hard, very poor, but working, it's not true. It's not true. It's not true. It's possible poor, but wheat production, necessary heavy work only during the sowing and plowing and harvest period. On the time of Middle Ages, for peasant, lot of free time. Lot of free time. Not by chance, in the Christian calendar, there are 127 festival. Walking, singing, presentation of theater, attraction. 3 days. Somehow, it's an official Christian fast. According to anthropologists, historical anthropologists, describe this is the days of unemployment. Free time. Free time. Moreover, the Sunday, half of year, no work. During the sowing, plowing, and harvesting, heavy work, but it's quite moderate period. Look at the consequence. One sow seeds produce 4 to 10. It's very moderate. Look at the problem. One seed produce 4. This is quite general in early Middle Ages. Necessary to pay the royal tax, pay landlord tax, save one seed for following years. Therefore, for eating, it's very moderate, only one seed left. Yet, and necessary to pay knife for church. Therefore, to the first impression, it's a miracle how able survive a peasant family. And the solution of this problem, a common used area. Because this only the production of arable land. But in the medieval peasant community, there are a lot of common used land, common used forest, common used water, common used grazing land, which it's flexible. It's flexible. It's a buffer area of production. Therefore, much higher living standard if density of population lower. Therefore, eastern part of Europe, the peasants live much higher living standard. Why? Because density of population is lower. Therefore, common use land much larger. In the, for example, 17th century, Polish peasant lived much higher living standard compared with the French. Why? Lower density of population, larger buffers area. Okay. Wheat exhausts the land. 2 following years, not possible sowing on the same estate wheat. Therefore, exhaust. Important consequence, half of potential arable land is fallow. It's a grazing land, not used. When, on the time of Industrial Revolution, introduce a modern agrarian and rotation of the plants, double arable land. In the feudal period, in the traditional time, half of potential arable land is a fallow. It's a grazing land. Okay, look at the rice. In the case of rice, there are 2 types of the rice. Dry rice culture, but the dominant is a wet rice culture. You know that working a peasant, it's until the knee on walking on the marshland and following the water. This is the wet rice culture. Very much handwork. Very much handwork. But the productivity is unbelievable. One seed able to produce 30 to 50. Moreover, some Mediterranean area, warm area, rice able harvest 2 times. Some ideal situation 3 times. Therefore, density of population in Asian culture increased unbelievable manner. Look at, for example, density of population. In the Middle Ages, the highest level of density of population in Low Country, recently Belgium and Netherlands. Belgium and Netherlands are highest density of population, 50 person per square kilometer. In China, in the area of Nanking, the southern capital of China, 250 density of population in consequence of high productivity and carrying capacity of rice. Okay, later I will return in the case of America. Long-time fertility. Somebody know how able to save long-time fertility, the arable land of rice. Used a sheet of cities. But how? Because the sheet of a human sheet is not good for fodder. Decrease the concentration. Decrease the concentration. Therefore, the peasants who are walking in the lake like arable land, walking in human sheet. If you offer for you a good job for rice estate, it's not so good because you have to work in traditional manner. I don't know recently because recently probably using fertilizers, modern fertilizers and pesticides, but in traditional time had to work on human sheet. Therefore, long-time fertility safe because it's a flow. Low concentration of human sheet continuously in the rice estate. Look at the maize, the corn. A little bit between the rice and the wheat. Why? Because to the production of maize in America, in Maya and Inca civilization, necessary only 50 days handwork per year. Not so much. Not so much. A lot of free time. For example, some cultural and historical anthropologists describe that great pyramid temple construction was a consequence, a lot of free time for the peasant of the Maya and the Inca civilization and used for theological strategy and constructed great buildings for the gods. Productivity similar like rice, one seed able to produce 30 or 50, and not by chance, if we are looking at Tenochtitlan, a capital of Aztec Empire, density of population 400 square kilometer. 400 square kilometers. Somebody know which is the name of Tenochtitlan? Mexico City. On the ruin of Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, constructed Mexico City. Not so healthy area because before the construction of Mexico and destruction of Tenochtitlan, it was a marshland area. It's very unhealthy physical environment. Okay, this is the profile of production. Look at the consequences, social consequences. Social consequences, wheat-based culture. Because very moderate density, carrying capacity of wheat, because you remember one seed produces only 4. Therefore, in traditional Europe, never broken the proportion 80% of population should to be peasant and only 20% of population might be independent for primary production and might be, for example, intellectual, nobleman, or I don't know, clerk, or church clerkman, or somehow independent from primary production. It's very important, very important. Look at, for example, the history of Hungary. In the history of Hungary, proportion of the peasant, even on the time of Second World War, in the middle of 20th century, 57% of population, even in the middle of 20th century, was peasant. Therefore, European society dominated by peasant. Okay, low density of population, very important, low density of population. You can compare even the highest concentration of density of population, low country, Netherlands, Belgium, 50. But very important positive consequence are interesting for technical innovation. Never enough workforce. Therefore, a lot of technical innovation which invented other civilization, a European technical civilization integrated. Look at, for example, look at the magnetic compass, invented in China. Look at the gunpowder, invented in China. Look at, for example, windmills, invented in Persia. Look at the water milk, invented somewhere in Muslim world. No invention, no key invention inside of the European civilization, but European civilization was so sensible for the technical innovation, integrated everything. And, which is the key factor, low density of population. Look at, for example, a carrier of gunpowder. Carrier of gunpowder, invented in China. But the Chinese army, 1 million soldiers. Gunpowder is very dangerous, used for fireworks in the court of emperor, but no real military application. Why? Because gunpowder, very dangerous. Look at the first generation of the muskets. So dangerous the user than the people who try to shut down. First generation blow up. But in Europe, a poor country would like to be much stronger, invested huge money to firearms, developing of firearms. Why? Because if we are looking at Middle Ages army, which is the most important unit of Middle Ages army, medieval army, heavy cavalry. And one, how the name is, nobleman of heavy cavalry, necessary to learn 10 years. It's very early time, it's a adolescent period necessary to learn using different devices, different arms. And when ready, after 10 years education. It's possible dying in the first battle. Expire investment. Look at, for example, firearms. Making one musket, it's 2 weeks work, 2 weeks. And it's very easy to recruit a soldier. There is, for example, one peasant, it's a hoeing. And come here, we have a good job. And because learning using a firearm is very easy, turn to the direction of target and pushing the trigger. It's not a great job, not necessarily 10 years for education. And therefore, it's possible, it's blowing up the muskets, but very easy calling the other peasants, good job, you will soldier, and so on and so on. But finally, firearms, generation by generation, became very heavy and efficient devices. And if, for example, at technical level, compare China with Europe, no advantage on the side of Europe, only two positions. Firearms and the sailing. Firearms and the sailing. Any other technical field, China much better. But the firearms and the sailing technology, it's enough for European domination. High sensibility for technical innovation. Very important, balanced nutrition. Balanced nutrition. Because if jump back a little bit, wheat exhausts the arable land. Therefore, necessary to living together animal husbandry and the plant farming. Why? Because half of the potential arable land, a grazing land for animal. It's a shitting on the field, it's recover the fertility, no other way, no artificial fertilizer, no other way, only the fodder of animal. Therefore, in the European diet, until Industrial Revolution, very important, meat, animal foods. Look at China. Look at China. If you know a classical Asian diet, in the classical Asian diet, dominate by rice. It's a classical mention in China, for one peasant enough, one hand of rice. Enough for survival, not necessarily more. But so successful, the rice production, no place between the field of rice for grazing land. Therefore, if we are looking at the classical Chinese cooking, which is the typical meat? Chicken, duck, pig, and it's possible cat and rats and any others. But the small animal, no place for cattle, no place for horses, no place, because a Chinese civilization dominates huge rice field, because the carrying capacity so high. If look at, for example, generalization about the Chinese, which is the general. The Chinese is a small people, it's a short people. It's not true. Look at the classical encyclopedia of Guinness record book. The tallest man, Chinese, not genetical reason, but the people living in underfeeding. You know, two forms of underfeeding: qualitative underfeeding and quantitative underfeeding. Quantitative underfeeding means not enough calories. A qualitative underfeeding means no fine elements, vitamins, nutrition, and the trace element, and so on. And the body reacts for the changing of feeding. Look at, for example, a Hungarian population. In the Hungarian population, on the time of conquering, was the same as recently. Average of Hungarian male on the time of Hungarian conquering 1000 years ago was 171 centimeter average, like recently. But very interesting, in the 18th century dominated by wheat culture, we have documentary sources, army documentary sources. Army documentary sources describe two information. One is the size of body. My question, which was the other, which the army doctors described for the recruited soldier? Size of body and the number of teeth. Very interesting. Why? Why is so important the number of teeth? Because in the military campaign, no cooking. Necessary to eat dry meals. If not enough teeth, it's lost the body power. It's interesting. Okay, but turn back. In the middle of 18th century, the size of body of Hungarian male population averaged 160 centimeters. Change. And I spent my childhood in a small village. And very interesting, the building which constructed in the 19th century, the doorway, but I am not so tall, the doorway, I have to go, it's moving down my head. Why? No evil carpenter constructed a building. The generation of 19th century, it's a shorter walls. Okay. Therefore, a rice culture produces a qualitative underfeeding. Good. And I spoke about balanced nutrition, not by chance. On the time of great geographical discovery and colonization, there is a generalization about the European. It's tall. It's a tall people. Why? In consequence of balanced nutrition. More balanced nutrition compared with the Amerindian culture and Asian culture. Yeah, I spoke about the 5-to-1 proportion, 5 plant farming, 1 animal husbandry. Look at the rice and maize-based culture, high density of population, both cases. You remember, this is the density of population, Nanking, southern Chinese capital, and Tenochtitlan, it's a former Mexico City, much higher. High density of population, low sensibility for technical innovation. A lot of key innovation, like magnetic compass, like gunpowder, invented in China. But the local civilization wasn't sensible for that, because the problem was able to solve with traditional manner. Qualitative starvation, not enough fine element, nutrition, vitamin, trace element and other. And low importance of animal husbandry for domination of maize and rice culture. Okay, thanks a lot, but not closing, of course, but continuing with the following slide series. It's how many pages? Okay. If we are looking at history, sorry, but it's possible, not so good. Okay. Good. Turn back to the story. If we are, I will print out for the following occasion. The next story, the story of the greatest disaster of European civilization. If possible, you listened about it. It's named to Black Death, a bubonic plague period. A bubonic plague period which destroyed 1/3 of European population. A European population reached 90 million people. And probably this was the demographic ceiling, the upper limit of carrying capacity of European agriculture. And if one population approaching to the surviving limit, it's appear obviously a different form of underfeeding, a starvation, quantitative and qualitative starvation. In the traditional time, no efficient manner of curing. Therefore, the most important condition of the survival, good condition of the body and good condition of the immune system. If a huge population underfed, obviously immunity and the sensibility for the epidemics much higher or lower, depending on the point of view. And the climate changed on the time. Appeared a late ice age, a cold period. In consequence of cooling of climate, decreased the vegetation period, decreased the length of vegetation period, and decreased the arable land. Therefore, the carrying capacity of Europe, which overflew somehow demographic sense, decreased the carrying capacity, it's moved and slowed to crisis. The name of late ice age, it's derived back to the increase of size of glaciers, alpine glaciers. Alpine glaciers, or generally the glaciers, indicator of climate change. During the cold period, increase the size of glaciers. It's a cold river, it's an ice river practically. And on the time of warming, like recently, on the time of recent global warming, decrease the size of glaciers. Not by chance, if you visit in Austria or Switzerland, there is a milestones where were in the 19th century or 20th century the position of the glaciers, because a lot of 100 meters melted down, melted back. Okay, this is the diagram about changing of Aletsch Glacier in Switzerland, and you can see that late ice age didn't mean a continuous cold period, but it's a colder and warmer change. But recently, quite obvious the trajectory of recent global warming. Good. It's not interesting. Good. The first people, the first scholar who tried to describe the problem which unfolded in the 14th century, the demographic crisis, the subsistence crisis, lived at the turn of 18th and 19th century. He was an Anglican clerk, Anglican priest and demographer. And he was the first person who tried to describe why launch hunger and epidemic crisis on the world. His principle was population growth is exponential. Look at exponential growth model. In the traditional time, the fertility period of women, it's generally in statistical level, may calculate between 14 to 40. You remember a play of Romeo and Juliet. How old was Juliet? 14. And if you saw Romeo and Juliet, in the first scene there is a debate between mother of Juliet and Juliet, because try to push him to marriage with Prince Paris. And very interesting arguments of the mother of Juliet. You are 14. Why waiting for 14? I was mother in your age, argued mother of Juliet. Therefore, 40 years is a typical starting date of potential marriage. In demographical calculation, each second year it's possible one birth. Therefore, it's a potential period, it's at 26. Therefore, if we calculate, it's maybe maybe 13 potential births in this fertility period, but for statistical reason, simplify to 12. One woman able to produce, in historical demographical terms, produce 12 births, 12 children. But rate of mortality is very high. 50%. 50%. Each second birth closing with death of child. Therefore, only half of potential birth there is a chance for living to age of adult. But if we are looking this perspective, two parents able tribe a family number in one generation. Therefore, according to principle of Malthus, population able to exponential growth. Practically is never performed, but it's a model, according to model, it's possible. But agrarian production, the maximal capacity, 10%. Therefore, the scissor between carrying capacity and demographic growth, time by time, is open. And the breaks, the Malthusian breaks, epidemics, war, and famines close the scissors. But modern historical demography arguing beside the classical Malthusian model, it's a resource tangent model, introduced two other model. This is the first Malthusian model. But the second one, population and the structure of land ownership. It's a key factor in the traditional society. The first heritage system, the primogeniture, you know which is the primogenitors. The firstborn boy is bringing everything. You know, primogeniture, okay. But which is the problem with the primogeniture? Any other boy and the brother or sister, useless. On the time of Middle Ages, for long term, the crusade, you know which is the crusade. It's a military campaign for Holy Land. The crusade, it's decreased the tension from the primogeniture because the brother who didn't receive the heritage, moved to crusade with the crusade and tried to gathering a fortune in Holy Land. Which is the other herring system? Parallel herring. Every member of the family or brother and sister receive the same proportion. The problem with the parallel herring system that after some generation, so small the estate, not enough for survival. Therefore, the herd system might create crisis similarly. And finally, the complex relation between population and agrarian production. Which is the problem? In the traditional time, no devices transport the food surplus one place to other. No devices. Therefore, it's possible one village, it's dying for famine. Other villages, 100 kilometers, the food surplus is fed by pigs. No information, no devices for communication and transporting. Not by chance, the first journal which published in Europe, it's a Fuggerzeitung, it's a journal, it's an economic journal with prices and economic information. No with poems, no with literature, no economic information. Because on the 16th century, when published, it was a European journal. It's a lot of people ordered everywhere in European cities, contain economic information. And in traditional feudal medieval world, no information and no devices for balancing the differences. Okay? Look at the Black Death. Look at the first sentences only. Okay? Very important to mention, there are two homelands of plague. How I mean on the homeland? In the homeland area, eastern part of Africa and outskirts of Himalaya in Central Asia, living animals, rodents, you know which is the rodents, it's a mouse-like animals, which are bearer of plague bacteria without symptom of infection. It's a bearer of, like for example, it's there is a oven. There is a, for example, how the name is it's a fire. It's a continuously burning fire in the oven. Like these rodent animal, a bearer of bacteria, lived in closed area. It's a quite closed area. And when launched a bacterial infection. Very interesting, the mechanism of the epidemics. The first, the triggering effect, you know which is the triggering effect. It's no good Hungarian translation. It's a triggering effect, a small change which launch a chain of interaction which never able to close down and to stop. And the triggering effect, a drought, a dry period. On the time of dry period, everything destroyed. Vegetation, prey animals, predator, everything. But each drought period closed somewhere, and recovery capacity of prey animals, like rodents, much higher than predators. Therefore, overgrow the prey population, rodent population, bearer of bacteria of plague, and moved everywhere. And meet with rats, grey rats, who are living in human settlements. And this is the step of transmission. Very important to mention that the vector, the transmitter, not the rats, not the rodents, but the flea. Somebody met personally with the flea? No? Nobody. I lived together a lot of flea because during my childhood I slept with my bed with one cat. And my cat was a very free spirit, and every time I had at least 5 or 10 flea. And there is a very special skill necessary for flea hunting, because it's a flea is a very quick animal. But it's not a real size of the flea. Flea is a very small animal. And look at the mechanism. This is therefore named a Black Death, because look at a mechanism. Okay, look at the mechanism. A flea drinks from the rodents of rat blood, carries bacteria. And a flea is very loyal. There is a cat flea, a dog flea, for example, pig flea, a human flea. It's a very loyal. But what happened in consequence of infected flood? A bacteria multiply in flex gut and close. No chance for or flowing into the stomach. Therefore, a flea became crazy and jumping to everywhere and bite. And from the mouth of flea, it's flowing back to the micro blood vein and infect the people who bite. But finally, the flea dying, similar Bacteria multiply its flat gut clogged by bacteria and free by human and irradiated blood. This is the mechanism of infection. Okay? And the last one. Not by chance, the pandemic, the more civilization reached epidemics, is distributed on the great trade routes. On the time of early Middle Ages existed two trade routes. The blue one, it's a spice trade routes, and the red one, Great Silk Roads. The plague epidemics arrived to Europe on the Great Silk Roads, and we can identify exactly a place when transmitted an Asian infection and became European infection. It's happened in Theodosia. On the time it named Kaffa, Genoese trading ports, and recently named Feodosia. It's a Russian city recently. And the Mongolian troops took under siege, besieged one Genoese port, and wasn't able to occupy. Therefore, used a biological weapon with help of catapults, tumbled in the body of people, of soldiers, died in plague, and infected a Genoese people, and the Genoese people moved and brought to Europe, and the infection distributed following the trajectory of Genoese fleet and distributed whole of Europe.